Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. In recent years, Chinese historical costume dramas have become increasingly popular. And people have become more and more interested in the clothing of ancient times, with discussions on the topic growing. In some historical dramas, the female protagonists are often seen wearing floor-length skirts when they go out, which at first glance seems quite impractical. Sometimes, viewers even leave comments asking, how come the heroine's clothes never get dirty, or ancient clothes were really luxurious and exquisite? Aren't people in the past worried about getting those long, trailing dresses dirty? So, what's the real story behind this? According to historians, those long skirts in historical dramas really are stunningly beautiful. With their long trains, silky fabric, and smooth texture, it's easy to tell that such clothing was reserved for the wealthy and powerful in ancient times. These aristocrats, who lived lavishly, would casually wear high-end clothes to banquets, dazzling others with their luxury. People dressed in rainbow satin were often members of the upper class, who were deemed worthy of such extravagant attire. In reality, many of these luxurious garments were worn only once before being discarded. Some emperors in ancient times would wear clothes just once and then throw them away. This one-time use practice was seen as a form of thriftiness at the time. This is because social stratification was extremely apparent, and the gap between commoners and aristocrats was so vast that they couldn't even be compared. In the capital, ordinary people wore thin, simple clothes and lived in difficult conditions, relying on the meager harvests from the fields to survive. Meanwhile, the powerful and influential nobles lived extravagantly, leading entirely different lifestyles. Historical records mention that the queen in a certain dynasty had around 100 attendants. This was considered economical for the time. Some royal family members who valued ostentation had so many attendants following them when they went out that the numbers were beyond counting. To keep their clothes from getting dirty, their maidservants would either sweep the roads ahead of them or lift their skirts to prevent the precious silks from getting any dust on them. These super luxurious outfits, in the eyes of the nobility at the time, were like disposable items, often worn just once before being discarded. Some nobles were extremely extravagant, preparing many new outfits for each season and changing clothes frequently at banquets, simply to show off their wealth and status, wanting to appear more prestigious than others. In their eyes, wearing the same outfit repeatedly would imply that their family wasn't doing well financially. As for the long trailing design, it represented elegance and dignity in ancient fashion culture. For the nobility, wearing such clothing was not just for modesty but also a symbol of identity and status. They often saw wearing long skirts as a way to showcase their nobility and authority, highlighting their unique social status. Even if the skirt got dirty, they wouldn't care too much because, for them, these clothes weren't just garments. They were expressions of culture and artistic pursuits. In ancient Chinese society, the nobility enjoyed high social status and privileges. Their actions, manners, and attire represented authority and set an example for others. In this context, the design of long skirts became a symbol of etiquette for the nobility, signifying their formality and respect. Moreover, the ancient nobility had strict requirements and regulations for the maintenance and cleanliness of their clothing. They would often hire professional laundry workers or use meticulous cleaning methods to care for their garments. However, there is a common misconception about wearing extravagant clothing. It wasn't something worn all the time, but only for important occasions when floor-length skirts were appropriate. In short, this custom was far beyond what we might imagine as ordinary people. Of course, not all nobles were extravagant with their spending. There were many frugal nobles in history. Also, ancient clothing customs were very strict, and people had to dress according to their status. Wearing long skirts wasn't something everyone could just do as they pleased. The floor-length skirts were not everyday clothing worn by ancient people, rather, they were more like special ceremonial dresses. They were typically worn only on very important occasions, such as large celebrations or court banquets. There is a historical account that Emperor Wen of Han deeply favored consort Shen and once gifted her many luxurious silks as a token of his affection. Overjoyed, consort Shen had a floor-length skirt made with a trailing back. When Emperor Wen saw it, he became furious, thinking it was wasteful, and ordered that the trailing part of the skirt be cut shorter, warning her not to do such things again. Moreover, even wealthy concubines were not free to wear floor-length skirts at will. There were strict rules about the length of the skirt's hem, and it could not exceed certain limits. Different dynasties had varying regulations regarding the length and style of these skirts, and these rules even changed over time. In the Han dynasty, ceremonial dresses typically featured skirts that only reached the top of the feet. If they touched the ground, it was considered wasteful. Emperor Cheng of Han had a particular fondness for Zhao Fian, a dancing palace maid who wore a skirt called Lucien skirt during her performances. The skirt was light, flowing, and extremely beautiful, winning the emperor's favor. As a result, the style of this skirt became very popular in the palace. However, such long skirts used up a lot of material and were too expensive for ordinary families to afford, making them a garment mostly worn by the elite to display their status and rank. During the Tang dynasty, common people still had to wear coarse cloth clothing. Only those who passed the imperial examination and earned official positions could wear silk and other fine fabrics. Although the Tang dynasty was relatively prosperous, the social hierarchy was still very clear, and the difference between the clothing of ordinary people and that of the nobility was immense. In ancient times, there was an unwritten rule that the clothes one wore reflected one's social status, and people were very particular about their attire. In the early Ming dynasty, rules were even stricter. If a family was involved in trade or commerce, their social status was considered lower, and they were even forced to wear clothing similar to that of peasants, prohibited from wearing silk. Wealthy merchants also faced limitations on their social standing and were not allowed to wear the same luxurious clothing as officials. However, the income of ordinary people in ancient times was usually very low, making it difficult for them to afford even basic necessities, let alone expensive fabrics. The clothing habits of ancient people actually reflected the social conditions of the time. When people were poor, they wore simple, short garments. Only when they were wealthy could they afford long robes. Short garments became a symbol of the hardship endured by the lower classes, and they also reflected their spirit of resilience and perseverance. Despite the simplicity of short garments, ancient people did not abandon the pursuit of beauty. Even a simple short garment could be made beautiful and unique through techniques like weaving and embroidery. For instance, delicate lace could be added to the collar or cuffs, or peony flowers could be embroidered on the front. These small details enhanced the beauty of the simple attire. Although life was hard, ancient people were willing to invest in little luxuries to bring beauty into their lives. Furthermore, short garments were extremely durable. Unlike luxurious long robes, which often wore out after a few uses or were discarded, short garments could last many years with repairs. There is a saying in ancient China, new clothes last 3 years. Old clothes last another 3 years, and patched clothes can last 3 more years, referring to how durable short garments were. Some historians have pointed out that the reason common people wore short clothes was not only because they were poor, but also because such garments were more suitable for daily labor. Only the wealthy could afford long robes. Today's historical dramas often portray royal court scenes, creating the illusion that ancient clothes were all grand and luxurious, with long robes trailing on the ground. In reality, the everyday clothing of most common people was simple short garments. And in some remote areas, people commonly wore short clothes and trousers. In today's society, we no longer worry about food or clothing, and clothes are no longer symbols of social status. However, the short garments worn by ancient people, though simple, reflected their hard-working, frugal, and resilient spirit. In that time of scarcity and hardship, short garments became a symbol of their attitude toward life and their determination to persevere. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.